Hello YouTube! Today we are going to talk about authentication. I prepared a presentation for us, but if you don't want to watch this presentation and jump directly into code, I will leave the timeline in the description down below, okay? So let's start by understanding what's the difference between authentication and authorization. So authentication is the process of verifying your identity. If you are saying that you are John Doe, the application needs to really understand if you are John Doe or not. After you are authenticated, usually the application needs to understand what you can do inside that application. So if you are John Doe, for example, you can create and delete users, and that's usually known as the permission system of your application. Then we can look into the authentication flow. And for that, we usually need something like /login as an API endpoint and a /signup as an API endpoint. They will look similar with some differences, but they will look similar, okay? So we can use them in the same diagram. And for both of them, the browser or your mobile application will send a username and a password. Those two will do something internally and then return a JWT for your client, okay? We will look into that JWT in 2-3 minutes time, okay? For now, let's focus on sign up and then login. So the sign up will be an API endpoint using the method post, okay? And the first step we do there is when we receive the password, we will hash that password. That password shouldn't be hashed with MD5. We should use something like bcrypt. And from the documentation, you can see that bcrypt will adapt with time and become slower if we increase the number of rounds, okay? So as an example here, these are the number of rounds used in a 2 GHz CPU with bcrypt, okay? And the way those rounds work is in an exponential way, okay? So imagine that we use, for example, 10 rounds and we will hash our password 2 to the 10 times, okay? So we can hash 10, we can create 10 hashes per second, okay? If we use something like 25, we can only create 1 hash per hour, okay? Which it's probably too slow for your application, right? Because it will mean that every time your user logs in, he needs to wait 1 hour for you to hash the password and then go to the database, validate if they are the same password and returns back. So you need to take care in the number you use. I will say you should probably start on number of rounds as 10, and this is the salt rounds if you look into the documentation. So start on 10 and then increase as you need, okay? And again, from the documentation, we can see that instead of cracking a password every 40 seconds with MD5, I would be cracking them every 12 years or so with bcrypt, okay? So that alone should be good enough for us to agree that we should use something like bcrypt. So for this demo, we will use bcrypt in code, okay? So let's keep understanding the sign up flow. By now, as I said, I think we agree on using bcrypt. After we use bcrypt, we can save the hashed password and username to a SQL table, let's say a person table or user table, okay? Then we send back that JWT immediately, or some applications do also did. They force the user to validate their email, okay? So they send an email to the user needs to open a URL from that email, so it makes that email validated. And this avoids that your application is full of accounts that are just spam accounts, okay? So it also depends on your business requirements, what your application does and doesn't do, okay? The next thing we need to look for is the login. And if you understood the sign up, the login will be super similar. So when we receive the username and the password, we once again hash that password using bcrypt, and then we will compare that password with our database password. If they are the same, it means that the user is who they say they are. So we can say, okay, you are authenticated, and we send the JWT token to them, and they can use that JWT token in the next requests, okay? If the user and password doesn't match with what we have in the password, we just send an error, and usually we attach that error to an HTTP status code of 401, unauthorized, okay? Then the authentication flow, we have that JWT that I said we will touch in 2 minutes time. So we are touching it now. And what is this JWT thing? It's a way, or a secure way, to transfer claims between two parties, okay? And the claims can be digital signed or encrypted, which means that the integrity of those messages is protected. So a message that you create in your server, you can send it to your client, they can read that message, understand everything that's inside that message, but if they change that message and they send it back to you, you know they changed that message, okay? So it protects the message integrity, okay? So as I said, nobody can change the context of that message. Everybody can see what's inside that JSON payload, as I said a minute ago. So please don't put any private data inside, like your user password, or if you are in an European country, don't put things like the address of that person, because it will be against GDPR. If someone can grab that token, you expose some private information. So be really conscious of what you put inside that JWT token. On top of that, the bigger your JWT token, the more data you need to send in every single request you do to your server. So keep that in mind, okay? And this is literally what I said right now. So if you want, you can understand what is inside the JWT token. And inside the JWT token, it's composed by an header, okay, which will be base64 encoded, and it usually only has two properties, that JSON, which is the algorithm used to encrypt the secure part, and the type, which only says JWT, okay? And I'm saying JWT, I should say JWT. So payload and claims is the second part of your JWT token, and it will be base64 encoded. And some of those keywords are reserved keywords. For example, the issuer, which is ISS, is a reserved word, okay? The subject is another one, the audience, the expiration time when that JWT token should be expired. And you can see all of those over there, okay? On top of that, you can use your own keys, which are your private ones for your application. And by private, your user can still see them. So they are not private, they are just not inside the specification, okay? So you can put anything you want inside that JSON payload, okay? And then the last bit, the important one, which is the signature. And this is what will make your message, in the integrity of your message. They will keep the integrity of your message, so nobody can change your message. If they change, you will understand immediately they changed that message, okay? And usually the way that signature works is we have an algorithm. In this one, we have that HMA CHA256, which is just an hashing algorithm using a secret, okay? And basically, we will base64 encode the header and base64 encode the payload, okay? And then this signature will be appended at the end of our JWT token, okay? So you can check the JWT token specification in this URL, but first I will just show you the website and how you can see what's inside the JWT token. So this is a JWT token, and if you see, we have some dots over here, and those dots is what separates the header. So the first bit is the header, the second bit is the claims or the payload, and the last bit is our verify signature, okay? So let's say that I change something here. I say that my name is no longer John Doe, is Bruno, for example, okay? So if I do Bruno, you saw that my header didn't change, okay? I can even type again, and you see that my header is not changing. What is changing is my payload and my secret, okay? Oops, the secret is all of this. That's what's changing. And if we grab these, okay, and we go to a base64 decode, okay, we can paste that over there, decode, and as you can see, everybody can see what's inside that, okay?
Here's a result from search.
Oops, Google Assistant. Sorry. So if we just click now on encode and we paste this one, okay, and I say instead of being Bruno SSS, I say hello world, okay, I generate another base64 encoded, and if I copy this one, okay, and I paste it over here, you will see that it will fail. First, it will fail because I have two equals, and literally two equals, they don't need the padding of base64. So we can remove those two. But at the same time, we will see that there is an invalid signature because our signature was validating our previous payload. So it will fail. Our server knows that someone changed this message. Okay. So it's really powerful, and that's what we are going to use in order for our client to send to our server those claims, and our server can trust those claims. Okay. So going back to our presentation, the next bit that you are probably asking is, okay, so in a request flow, the user needs to send the JWT token. The /any is any endpoint that you want to be protected. Okay, we'll understand that JWT token, checks if it's not expired, and checks if the secret and the token itself, they match. And if they match, they execute whatever they have to execute, and they return the response. So step by step, we check if the JWT token is provided. If it is provided, we check if the signature match. If it matches, we execute the request immediately. If not provided the JWT token, or the signature doesn't match, or it was already expired, we just return a 401 and say, hey, I'm sorry, you are not authenticated, you are not authorized. Okay? So the last bit we need to understand is, if you want to persist your out tokens between refreshes of your pages or when you close your browser and you go back, if you want to persist that, you have two ways that you can persist that. The first one, and probably the most common one, is cookies. And then you can also store that in your web storage, which is, for example, local storage or session storage. Okay, so now we will understand the benefits of using cookies and these problems. Okay, and we will do the same for the web storage. Okay, so let's start by the web storage. What are the benefits of it? Is usually we will be protected against cross-site request forgery attacks. And this can be simple as you have a dangerous website or a malicious website that puts a form, and the post action of that form is, for example, the URL of your bank account to transfer some money. Okay, and because cookies will send the cookie on every single request, unless you make some measures, but by default it will send the cookies on every request to that domain, you can be in trouble in that moment, and that's called the CSRF attack, cross-site request forgery. Okay, and if you use local storage, you are protected against that one, but you then need to do one thing which is a bit annoying, which is every time you need to do a request, you go to local storage, put the token in the header and send it, and at the same time you will be vulnerable to cross-site scripting attacks. And what is that? Is when an attacker has access to your application. Okay, so if someone can inject JavaScript in your application, and local storage will be just easy to read. You can just do local storage.get item and you get the item you want. So then someone can impersonate you, get your token and just use it in whatever place they want, and they will be you for all the requirements of your server, right? So we shouldn't store sensitive data in web storage. If you look for a lot of blogs and a lot of specialists, they say don't store sensitive data in your local storage. And we can say that storing your JWT token, so your claims, it's probably super sensitive data. So it depends on you, but we should probably avoid storing it over there. So then leaves us with cookies. And cookies, the pros is it mitigated the attacks if using HTTP only. And what is HTTP only in a cookie? Is a way for you to only have the cookie through HTTP calls, okay? So you don't have access to that cookie when you do document.cookie, okay? That cookie is not accessible via JavaScript, okay? Which prevents the cross-site scripting attacks, or some of them at least, okay? And cookies are sent automatically in every single request, which is a good thing. So you as a front-end developer, you just need to do the calls to your server and the cookies will be sent automatically, which saves you some hassle, okay? The problem is because those cookies are sent automatically, well, you have the CSRF cross-site request forgery attacks that we spoke before. So it's always a balance, but you can mitigate some of these problems. And the thing that you see a lot of websites using nowadays is the two-factor authentication. So you log into a website, for example, to your bank or even Facebook, Gmail, whatever you log in, and usually they will send a message to your phone or a message to another email address that you have, and you need to put those. And it protects against some of these attacks, okay? Or at least make it harder for you to be attacked. So then we need to protect yourself against cross-site scripting attacks. As a front-end developer and as a back-end developer, you should never trust anything you receive from your users' input, be it in DOM input or if you are a back-end developer in your API input. So you should always escape everything you receive and take the measures you can take using the frameworks you are using. Most of them have escaping built in and things like that, okay? So never do things in React like set unsafe HTML or insecure HTML. Things like that are usually opening the door to cross-site scripting attacks, okay? So then what you can also do if you are using cookies is what we told before, which is using HTTP only in your cookie, putting secure, making sure that your cookies are only transferred via HTTPS, and put the same site. So it will only send the cookie if and only if you are on the same domain. Let's say that you have application.com and in another malicious application.com, someone puts the form we spoke 2-3 minutes ago. When they try to post, your browser, if you use same site to strict, will not send the cookies because it's in a different domain, okay? And this saves you from some of those cross-site request forgery attacks. So another thing you can do, and libraries like even AngularJS back then, they have methods for you to have CSRF tokens. .NET, when I was doing .NET, I think 2012, they also have anti-forgery tokens, okay? So most of the libraries that you use nowadays or frameworks, they have support for these CSRF tokens, and you should use them, okay? In this URL, you have examples of every single framework that you can do this. Not every single one, but the most famous ones, okay? And you have the logic behind it. The next thing that especially your banks do a lot is you log into your bank, you put your password, your email, they send a message to your phone, you put, so it was the two-factor authentication, but then after you are logged in and you put your one-time password code, your banks, if you are trying to do a transaction, okay, so sending money from one account to the other, your banks usually send another OTP for the transfer, okay? So it's a one-time password. Even if someone is acting as you and even if they have your JWT token, then that password arrives to your mobile phone. So even if they have that, you are kind of secure, okay? Someone can hijack your phone and get your messages, but that's a completely different subject, okay? So it's not 100% secure, but you have some level of security there, okay? And it's something that you should probably do when you are doing destructive actions like deleting a user. You should probably use the OTP codes, even if you don't use via SMS to your mobile phone, at least to an email where people can say, yeah, actually, I really want to do that. They copy those 5-6 numbers, they put the 5-6 numbers in your web page, and then they go forward, okay? And I think the last advice and the best one I can give you before we jump into code is, if your company has a security team, please speak with them. Explain exactly what you are doing, all the workflow you have in mind. And I'm 100% sure they will be super supportive of whatever you are doing. They will tell you all the problems you have. And those people, the only thing they want is to make your company safe and make your users' data secure. So go to them, explain, create diagrams with all the workflows you have, and they will help you. It's the best advice I can give you, okay? The last one, and this is probably obvious, but I think I should mention it, is use HTTPS in every single endpoint you have, and every single thing you do, it should be via HTTPS. If someone tries to access your website via normal HTTP, you should redirect them to HTTPS, okay? So also, if you have the excuse of, yeah, but certificates are expensive, well, they are no longer expensive. If you use something like Let's Encrypt, and Let's Encrypt is already inside Z8 now, which is the creators of Next.js. It's already inside Netlify. It's already inside Firebase. I'm not sure about Google Cloud Platform, but because Firebase is from Google, probably it's already there. I know that in Azure you can do something to use Let's Encrypt as well. Probably in Amazon you can as well. So if you use Let's Encrypt, the only problem is that the certificates, I think they expire every 3 months, but platforms like Netlify, they just regenerate the certificates automatically for you. For example, my blog posts are in a Netlify application and they just regenerate those certificates every, I think it's 3 months, not sure, but they just regenerate those certificates and I don't have to bother with that, okay? So I hope this initial introduction was helpful. We will now jump into code, okay? I will open VS Code, set up everything, and I will come back to you on that. The first command we need to execute is the npm install of both bcrypt and JSON Web Token. If you are using TypeScript, I'm also installing the types for bcrypt and JSON Web Token. While that one is installing, we can go to the migrations folder we created 2 weeks ago, and the first thing we can do is add another column to our person table. So we will add password, and that one will be of type text. And this column will have the password hashed using bcrypt. We can also delete all of this mock data from here because we no longer need that. Now that we finished that one and our database has the structure we will need, we need to go to our code and make sure we don't have many places like this one in people where we are just select star from person and sending it to all our clients, right? This is now a security problem because everybody will receive the hashed passwords, and with some brute force, sooner or later they will start to discover some passwords. So we want to avoid that, and we just need to send ID, email, and name, and not send the password. In your application, you need to go through all the source code and make sure that you are not sending the passwords to your clients, okay? While this one is done, I'm sure somewhere in the application we have more select stars, but for the demo, let's just focus on this one. And we can open an endpoint that we created also 2 weeks ago. And this one was for put and not for post. But we can probably copy this one and use that one as the template for our signup.ts. So let's try to use that one as a template and change it to sign up. Then the second thing is it's not a put, it will be a post. Instead of being an update to the table, it will be an insert into person. We can just remove all of these, pass the types that we need, which is password, values, first parameter, second parameter, and third parameter. The first parameter in our case is the name, so it's correct. Email, this is not query, this is body. It will come from our body, okay? And for now, we are going to pass the password as is, okay? So no changes to our password. Let's just copy this from here and put this over there. We don't want any of this filtering, so we can just do this. And we want all the users or all the people in our database, okay? We can even do some protection here saying else, which means that the request method is not a post. We can do res.status 405 and say JSON message, message, we only support post, for example, okay? Or some better message, but for now it's probably good enough, right? So this one, this one looks now good to go, right? We just need to do bcrypt and it looks good. So let's give it a shot first. So if we do npm run dev, we will start to run our application. Our database is completely empty. So if we go to localhost/API, localhost 3000/API/sign up, okay? This one should do nothing. It should say, hey, sorry, you don't have permissions or whatever was our message for the post. Oh, we only support posts, okay? So this is working as expected. So we can now open Postman, and you can use any other program. Postman is just a way for us to interact with our REST APIs, okay? You will see that's quite easy to use Postman to interact with the REST APIs. So Postman will probably take a while to open, but when Postman opens, you can just define everything. So show me now, and it's slow to open. So we have Postman over here. So we can do a copy paste of our URL, okay? Copy paste of our URL. We can say yeah and lesson, okay? And we can just go to the body and say that the body will be raw. We can say it's of type JSON, okay? And so what are we going to send? A name. In my case, my name is Bruno. The email, so in my case, we can use ba@pt.pt, for example, right? And the password, let's use the most secure password ever, 1234. Good password, right? You have to assume you already used this password somewhere, right? So let's just beautify these. So we make sure that that JSON is valid. And now we just need to make sure that in the headers, we have the content type of application JSON, and we have, because we changed the body to JSON. So we can now send these, and hopefully if it works, we can see now the response, and it said we only support post, and it's correct because we are using a get. So post, and if we do this now, we should have now a response of, yeah, my ID, my name, email, and password with 1234. Okay, so this is working as expected. So the next thing we need to do is to go to npm.js, and we can check the documentation for bcrypt. And the method that we care about of bcrypt is a method called hash, okay? So let's go to that method hash, okay? And this is exactly the method we care about, okay? So let's just put this method over here, okay? And just put the method over there, okay? So now we will import hash from bcrypt, okay? And so we don't need to pass this one over here, okay? And what we are going to pass is the rec.body.password, okay? And the number of salt rounds, as we said in the presentation in the PowerPoint, we can start by 10, but lately I'm even using 12 in my applications, but we can go to 10 for now, okay? And we will have literally a callback that will send us, or will call us with the hash itself. So we can just do this, put this inside, okay? Okay, and this now seems correct. We can do a sync, okay? And everything seems fine. So the only thing we need to change now is to copy that hash, and instead of using this password, we use our hash. In this one is also a good idea for you to check if the password is at least, let's say, 5, 6, 7, 10 characters, something that you define. You should validate if your email is really an email. If the name is not just something empty, you should probably also validate that, is that email already in the database or not? I will not do any of those because it's not part of the authentication itself, the methods, but you should validate all of those, right? Because otherwise it will just be a big mess in your app, right? So let's open Postman, and the next time we call Postman, we should now have 2 users in the database, and now our password looks much better or much nicer because it's hashed already, right? So our password at this stage is hashed. So we are good to go in terms of the sign up, even though, as I said before, now Bruno is repeated 2 times, okay? And this can cause problems when we are going to do the login, for example, because now when I do the login, I will have 2 users with the exact same email. So we will have problems. So what we are going to do is kill all of these. So kill those, go back to our application, stop the execution of the application. We can just go to this MySQLite, which is our database itself, okay? We can kill that one, even though we are running the migration, so I didn't even need to kill that one or to delete that one. But let's run this again, okay? And now everything is empty. So we can start here and do a send of that data. And we created now a user in our database called ba@pt.pt. and that user will have that hashed password. Okay, so that one will probably take a while to start because it's still warming up. Okay, so it's building, it's probably okay, it's now created. Okay, so with that one created, we can now start to take care of the login page. Okay, so let's go to our login itself, and once again we can probably just copy paste this one, right, and create an API called login.ts. Okay, so we paste that one once again, right, and after we paste this one, it's also a post, so it's okay. And now this will be slightly different because what we want to do is no longer an insert into the table. We want to do literally just a get from the database. So we can do something like what we are doing here. Okay, so let's do that. Let's go here to our login, and we can change all of this code we have over there. Okay, and we can do the following. We can say where, not vehicle, but person, okay, where email equals to, email, okay? And now we have the person with that email. So let's just delete this one, okay? So we have the person with that email. We can just remove this hash from there because bcrypt has a way to compare. So we can use the compare from bcrypt itself, okay? And this compare will compare our received password already hashed with the password that we are receiving from our database. So we can do this. We can come here and type this bcrypt.compare, and in our case we can just do compare like that. Okay, you can also use the compare synchronous, but in the documentation they recommend to use the one that is not synchronous. Okay, so the async one, and I agree with them in that case. Okay, so we will receive the my plain text password, which is request.body.password. Okay, and the one that is from our database. So we will do person.password. Okay, once again we should validate that person is defined, and only if person is defined then we go to password. Do all that validation in your code. Okay, so we can delete all of these now. Okay, and let's see together if this makes sense. We are checking the person, okay, by that email, which seems correct. So we got the person, then we are passing the person.password. So if that email exists, we receive the person, and the person has a property called password, which is a column in the database called called password. Okay, and so what we need to do over here is just check for now if the result that we are receiving is saying that they are the same. So the result will be a true or a false. Okay, and we can also validate to make sure that we don't receive errors. So if no error and result, which means the result is true, okay, and we don't have errors, in that case we can just do res.json, and we can send something like message okay for now. Okay, and otherwise, so else res.json message something went wrong. And now if you speak with specialists in security, they are kind of divided at this moment. Okay, but some of them say that you shouldn't say why you failed. You shouldn't say that you failed because you didn't find that email, and you also shouldn't say that you failed because of the password, because if you say, oh, you failed because this email doesn't exist, then they can keep calling your API until you say, yeah, this email exists, but the password is not there. So you are kind of opening a bit the security of your application. So probably, as I said in the last slide of our presentation, ask the security guys in your company what they think, what you should do, and they probably have super nice guidelines for you to follow, okay? But let's go to Postman now. And what we need to do in Postman is to send an email, okay? And a password of 1234. So we go to login and let's see if this works in the first place, okay? So clicking there, we are waiting for our API to respond, okay? And we failed with an internal server error. So let's check what happened over here, okay? So what happened? Password of undefined. So as we were expecting, this is on the query, which is not right. We should use the body, right? Because the query is the query parameters in the URL. This is on the body. So this is sometimes the bad things of copy pasting. So if we call this again, hopefully, yes, the message is okay. So our password is there. If we say, for example, 1235, okay, the password should be, oops, something went wrong. Okay, so this is kind of working. So the next step that we need to do is to go to npm, okay, and now in npm we need to check the other package that we are going to use, which is called JSON Web Token, okay? And inside JSON Web Token, for some reason my internet is super slow. I think it's because everybody is working from home during these days, so the internet is super slow. I'm sorry. So in here we have, I think it's not sign, so let me check. I don't remember the name of the method. It's sign. Yeah, it was sign. Ah, okay. Yeah, Bruno, if you learn how to type sign, probably it's better. Okay, so in the sign method, it will receive the object you want to send plus a secret. Okay, so let's first copy this one and let's go here to VS Code and let's do this. Let's say import from JSON Web Token. Okay, and in this one we have sign. Okay, so what we want to do is to sign the object with the ID, so the user ID. We want probably to save also the name, okay? And if you really want, we can use the issuer, okay? And if you remember, one of the properties for the subject is sub, so sub from subject, okay? And the subject for us, it can be the person.id, and for the moment, I don't think we need to send anything else, okay? And so, yeah, we don't need to send anything else for the moment, okay? So we can just do this one, okay? And we can just say this for TypeScript to stop complaining about it, okay? My claims, let's call it claims, okay? So this way, TypeScript doesn't complain anymore. I was just being silly. So now let's say const JWT token will be equals to sign claims, and now we should have a secret over here, okay? And this secret you can have as a environment variable for your application, and usually it should be something big enough, okay? So in this moment we can just go online and do a GUI generator, okay? For our demo is probably good enough. And let's just generate a GUI, copy paste this one, okay? And we can put it over there, okay? So it's probably good enough for now, okay? And we lost this one, so we can just click again and import from JSON Web Tokens, okay? So the message, which is the authorization token, out token, for example, I think it's just a good name. Our out token will be that one of the claims. So our sub from subject, and we can even add some other property, my person name, okay? And we can say person.name and email, for example, okay? And I'm calling it name and sending an email. Good job, Bruno. So at this stage, we have everything we need. So we can go to Postman and do the login with 1234, and we should now receive a JWT. And we received this JWT. So the next step is to copy this JWT. We can go to jwt.io. So the jwt.io. We will scroll slightly to the bottom when this page loads. And we can just type, it's still loading. Okay. So we can just type this message over there, and we can see that we have an issuer, which is the ID 1, our first user. We have my personal email, which is the email that we are going to send, and the issued at that time. We can even say something like, let me say it here, okay? Expires at, I think is EAT, I think so. Let me just confirm. Expire in, yep, this is the one, okay? So we can say that our token will expire in, for example, 1 hour. So we can come here and say in the JWT that expire in 1 hour. So now if we go to Postman and we do this again, we should receive another JWT token, okay? We can, and JWT token, I'm saying JWT token, but token is already in the T of JWT. But yeah, let's say this, okay? So we can see that the expiration time, so it's there already, which is great because in 1 hour it will expire. Okay, so we already have our sign up and our login. So the next step is for us to go to the Micro website and try to understand how they do middlewares. If you don't know what is Micro, Micro is completely compatible with the Next.js routing APIs, okay? So if we open this issue, you will understand that the way a middleware works in Micro is not the same way that you are used to, for example, Express, where you put a middleware in Express with app.use, and that middleware will be used for all the endpoints. In Micro, it's slightly different. Your middleware will be used explicitly by you in every single endpoint. So, for example, they have one example here of the handle errors, okay? And these handle errors, you describe it over there, and then you wrap your function with that handle errors. And the more middlewares you have, the more you will put in a wrapper, let's say, okay? So we can come here and probably just copy paste this one, okay? Let's just copy paste this one, okay? And go back to people, for example, and we can just pass this one. And now we can say next API handler, okay, which is the type of what we receive. We can say that it will receive a request, okay, and a response, okay. We need the column over there because I didn't copy. So this is literally what we are going to wrap our people with, okay. So at this specific stage, these handle errors that in our case will be authenticated, for example, okay, it's doing nothing, it's just bypassing, okay? So we can just wrap our get people with that authenticated thing, okay? And we can now make sure, oops, I wrapped it in the wrong place, my bad. So wrapping over there, okay? And so we can now go to Postman. Why is this over there? We can now go to Postman and we can say /people, okay? /people, we have a get, okay? We can even copy this because we will need this sooner or later. So we send data, okay? And our get just returned everything as we were expecting, okay? So what do we expect now? We need in this authenticated handler, okay, to start to check if our JWT token first is valid. Well, first if it was sent, okay, if we receive the JWT token. Then if we receive the JWT token, if it is a valid JWT token, if it's still full in the integrity, if nobody violated that JWT token, okay? And then if everything went well, we just call our function handler and everything keeps going. It's kind of the same of in Express, you calling next, okay? When you say next, it goes to the next piece of middleware or the real thing, okay? this is kind of the same thing over here. Okay, so what we can do here is, if you remember, we did an hard-coded GUID 10 minutes ago. So we can go there to that GUID, okay? And where we have this GUID over here, we can probably put it in a place to reuse, okay? So let's call it secret.ts, okay? And we can just export a const secret. And by the way, this should probably be in an environment variable. Don't put this in your code hard-coded, okay? Because if somebody compromises your secret, you should be able to change the secret almost instantly, okay? So if you change the secret, you will invalidate all the JWT tokens out there. So keep that in mind. Don't hard-code as I'm doing here. Just put it in a proper store or somewhere that you can change on the fly, okay? With that being said, okay, I need to go back to login. I put the secret over there, and now I need to import it from API/secret. Okay, so that secret is over there now, so I can use the secret in more places. So the endpoint we were changing, I think it was people. Yes, it was people. Okay, let me just close everything because I'm a bit tired of having everything open. So close all. Okay, much better now. Much better now. Okay, so what can we do now? We can just check the way in the login that we are exporting it. Okay, so we are literally signing it, and that's it. We can read it as well. So if we go to the JSON Web Token, apart from signing, there is a way for us to verify that token. Okay, so let's do the verification of that token. And which one do they recommend? They have quite a few. Okay, we can use this one for now because it's just the first one, right? So let's just use that one and go to people, close this login, go to people, and let's just make sure that, okay, var decode, okay, this is the decoded token. And let me just check what happens if for some reason it fails with an invalid token. We need a try catch. Okay, good to know. And we can also use it that way. Actually, you know what? I think I prefer to use it this way. Okay, yeah, let's use it this way. It's better, I would say. Okay, so let's do this. Let's import the verify from JWT, okay, JSON Web Token. And now the token will be request.headers, okay, dot authorization, okay. This will be the header that we are going to receive, okay. Now we can pass the secret, okay. We pass the secret, which is perfect. And now if we don't have errors and decoded as something inside, okay, we can just do await of that, okay. We can even do return await of that, okay. If for some reason the error is defined and we don't have a decoded, literally we need to do res.status 500, and we can say a message, a JSON with a message saying sorry, you are not authenticated, right? I think it makes sense this way, right? I think so. So what we have here, it's now basically saying that we need to make sure that that thing is over there valid, okay? And we don't need that. We can even say that this function is async. So everything seems to be okay, right? We can even do this. So everything seems to be working as expected. Let's go to Postman, and if everything is going well, calling now Postman should fail. Let's see if it fails. Yes, sorry, you are not authenticated. So let's do a login, okay, a login, and in this login, we will pass this email and password. So we will receive now an authentication. Oops, it needs to be a post. It's absolutely correct, okay. So when we click there, we now receive this huge token. So we can copy this huge token, okay, go to the headers and put authorization, okay. And in the authorization, we will pass all that token, okay? So the thing we want now is people endpoint, and the people endpoint will be a get. So when we call that, let me just close this a bit, we now receive what we were expecting, right? If I go here and I change this header for something invalid, so if I put an X before, for example, now I will not receive anything because, well, it's invalid, right? So what we have here, it's now working again. So what we have here, oops, VS Code. So what we have here in this authenticated, we can start to use this authenticated everywhere in your application. And it's easy to use, right? You just need to come to any other endpoint, for example, the vehicles endpoint, and the only thing you need to do is to do authenticated, okay? You do this, import this authenticated, okay? I'm not exporting, I'm sorry. Let me just export this one, okay? Even though we should put this in his own file and separate it from everything, but for to show you for this demo and for the video to not have 3 hours, let's just do this, okay? So now if we go to /vehicles on Postman, okay? So let's go to /vehicles, okay? /vehicles, because we have the right token, it should work, okay? Okay, we don't have any vehicle in the database, so it's perfect, sorry. And now, if we make it invalid once again, it should say that we are not authenticated, okay? And we received that message. One thing that we can do now is, in this one, I'm saying 401 or not. Let me just check what I'm doing in this token, okay? Actually, I'm putting a 500. We should say a 401 to say that we are not authenticated, okay? We can also come to our sign up just to see if everything seems okay. We can do, oops, wrong command. We can format these, okay? And now everything seems okay. We called it sign up. We have the secret already in the place we want, which is fantastic. We can go to the login, just make sure that we called, oops, again, the problems of copy pasting, okay? We have the login now, okay? We have this request.method to be post, so everything seems to be fine, okay? We can then also come to our vehicles and people and create another endpoint like this authenticated, for example, to only allow get, for example, and do the same type of validations we were doing here for this if method it's equals to a post, then if it's not, return a 405 saying that you don't accept that type of method. So we can create another wrapper or another middleware in order to say which methods we accept, but that's completely out of the authentication. I'm just saying that because sooner or later during this series, we will probably do that, okay? So by now we have everything we need, okay, in terms of authentication. You saw that if we send the wrong authentication key or authentication JWT token, we receive a 401 saying that we are not authenticated. Sorry again, saying that we are not authenticated, okay? And so we have everything we need from authentication. So I really hope this video was helpful for you. I'm really sorry because I think it becomes super big, probably close to an hour. But if you like the video, click on the like button, subscribe to the next videos on the channel, and next week we are going to create a bigger demo where we are putting everything into place. So we are even going to use some local storage to store our token, and we will do some server-side rendering consuming those APIs that we protected now. So you can see everything together. This demo was only about the API route. Next week we will join everything together and you will see a proper demo that you can even put in your GitHub to show to new employers or something like that. Okay, so I hope to see you next week. Have a wonderful week, and I hope you keep yourself safe, your family safe, and I see you next week. Bye bye.